Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into the Morse Code podcast. We got a spooky one for you this week because it's Halloween. I got to talk witchcraft, past lives, and of course politics with two St. Louis County Council members, Lisa Clancy and Kelly Dunaway. And I had a really fun time talking to them both, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing about my terrible past dating back to the Salem witch trials. It's a good one. Happy Halloween. So I'm very excited to speak with both of you, and I met both of you through my short and ill-fated entrance into local politics. And I remember you two were county council members who seem to kind of just like have your niche and have your shit together, and and it was cool because you guys have a little sort of network, and I was kind of like, oh wait, you mean this can be fun and there can be like normal people in politics? And that was very, very exciting and a big relief to me. So I was happy to meet you all, and you guys were very welcoming for my short and ill-fated attempt at politics.
That is very kind. When was that? When was your short and ill-fated? It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
It wasn't. We'll see if it is over or not over, but I ran for State House in 24, and I would have met you.
That was only a year ago.
I know.
Wait, what? That was only a year ago?
Isn't that crazy?
No, I don't believe that. Are you sure you're not off by a year or two?
It's been such a year.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Craziest thing I've heard all day.
So I think I met you. All right. I remember meeting Kelly at all of the events run together, but it was like a gala in summer of 23. And
when I was dressed like a Greek goddess.
Yes.
It was the annual Democratic Gala, St. Louis County, maybe?
I think it was the county demo.
Was it in La Una? No.
Yes.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Wasn't it?
Maybe. I don't know. They run together.
One was, but I'm trying to remember if this one was.
I think it was that one. Well, how do you know Lisa?
Angela Bingaman was the fundraiser for my state rep campaign, and we had call time once a week that was scheduled for 4 hours, and then because of my work schedule and my parenting schedule, we could only do 3 hours, and we would spend at least an hour and a half of that like shooting the shit, and
Yep.
She would talk about how she's more therapist than fundraiser. And it was a lot of fun and not very productive. But there was one point where she was like, you and Lisa Clancy are the same person. Do you know Lisa?
What?
But there was something where I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just can't. I just, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, I feel like I'm talking to Lisa right now. And so while you and I haven't like hung out much one-on-one, once she said that, I was always like, there's Lisa, she's my secret soulmate.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Lots of people have been connected by the line "Call Angela." So
Yeah, right. So all right, so talk to me about how each of you got into politics, and Lisa, I guess your path is probably a little bit more of a conventional one, maybe. But I think it's interesting that you both ended up on the county council. And like I said, I've found your sort of both of your presence there really refreshing. So tell me your quick story.
So I think a lot of it just goes back to sort of, I was raised to give a damn about what's happening in the community. My mom was very feisty when I was growing up about the things that were going on. She was, she did a lot. She was social work adjacent, not technically ever a social worker, but led nonprofits and I think exposed me to a lot of needs. And I think taking that, I went into social work school, both for undergraduate and graduate programs locally. I was a teacher for a while down in New Orleans, and I came back. And that was when I went and got my master's in social work at the Brown School at WashU, and then was working in a local nonprofit that when Ferguson happened, so when the uprising happened after Michael Brown was killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, we ended up sort of self-deploying to Ferguson actually after getting requests from community members. I was at Teach for America St. Louis working in our local office, and we were educators and the kids had school canceled in Ferguson and they needed a safe place for the kids to go that had supervision. So we posted up at the Ferguson library for a week or two. And I will not call myself an activist in the streets, but it really, all of that experience, the uprising that ensued in the weeks after, really made me think more critically about the role of local government in particular, especially here in the St. Louis region where we have such a crazy quilt of little fiefdoms and patchwork of services. And so I started paying more attention to St. Louis County government. I was always someone who watched more closely the state and federal levels. I mean, I did have some experience working with Senator Claire McCaskill when she was first elected, both on her campaign and then in her Capitol Hill office. I was an intern. So that was mostly on my radar. But again, I saw all the power and opportunity that exists at the local levels sort of around that 2014-15 era. And then in 2017, I learned of an opportunity to run for the county council because a friend of mine was originally going to do it against the person who was my opponent, because we thought my opponent wasn't actually going to run, and that he decided he was still going to run. He was going to go for a third term. And my friend backed out, and I was like, well, that's dumb. I'm going to go for it. And the rest is history. I unseated a 2-term incumbent who was, you were talking about funding earlier, Eric. Yes, funding's important, but I was definitely outraised, but I outworked him. And so that matters a lot too. And, fundraising can make the work easier for sure, but it's also about the people power. So here I am about to run for my third term.
That's great. Did you grow up in St. Louis? I don't remember.
I did.
Yeah.
I grew up in Webster Grove, so I'm in Maplewood now, but this area of St. Louis County is definitely home.
So I would say I've always nerded out on politics. Even as a kid, I was watching debates and I went to an inauguration in high school. And then I worked on Obama's campaign in '08, and I knocked on doors in Texas and Indiana and South Dakota and did some work from California. And then I have a day job where I did professional development, learning and development inside big law firms. And so it's sort of always weaved in and out. And then I actually moved to I was in the middle of the foreign service process. Like I had taken and passed the exam and was moving forward in the process when I met my now ex-husband and moved to St. Louis. And so I stopped that service route and went back to law firms and just sort of, became a mom, got my life going in St. Louis, and then Trump won. And I was like, hell no. And so I bit off way more than I could chew and ran for Congress and dropped out pretty quickly when, Court Van Ostrand was just out raising, out running, out everythinging all of us. And then when Steve Stenger resigned, my councilman became the county executive and a seat opened up. And that's where I found my way to the county council.
So talk to me a little bit about the work of a county council member. As I understand it, it's distinct from something that might happen in a state house as well as something that might happen on a municipal level. And I think a lot of people don't understand it very well. I will say that I do not understand it very well.
I would say it's a lot of reading.
Huh.
It's a lot of reading legislation, supporting documentation, understanding budgets. It's a lot of conversations with directors and people running projects and constituents who have unmet needs or whatever it is. Um, it's a lot.
We do a lot. Yeah, a lot. There you go. I think it's hard for people to understand because it's just another layer of government. That's kind of what it feels like to people. They don't understand the difference between their municipal government structure. Like I live in Maplewood. I have a mayor and a city council here in in Maplewood. That's the case for most people in St. Louis County. However, about a third of our population is what's called unincorporated St. Louis County. And for those that are in unincorporated, we really are for all intents and purposes their local government, um, providing basic day-to-day services. And we do a lot of things like that also for the entire county, but mostly only when it pertains to public health and maintaining roadways and other things that go throughout the county. Um, so it's a lot of things that like aren't very sexy. Most of our agendas are things like approving contracts for road work to happen. We've got like thousands of miles of roads that go throughout the county that we maintain and own. Things related to parks, accepting a donated pony at Susan Park. Um, Fortunately, that was something the entire council said aye to. So, but we have, thousands of acres of parks that our residents enjoy for all kinds of purposes. We have one of the biggest police departments in the state, and they oversee a lot of policing in St. Louis County, including in municipalities where some of the smaller munis don't have their own police force, so they contract with us. I mean, I think the public health function was something during COVID that everyone started to understand a little bit more. So, providing public health programs like tracking and tracing during the COVID epidemic, bringing vaccines to residents. Um, we run the Vector program, which has to do with insects and mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff that you want to test for and make sure it's not disease carrying, and I'm not using the right sciencey words, but I think you get it. So there's a lot of functions that we provide. And also, the thing about public health too is that our public health department actually runs clinics, and that's for a lot of our residents that are on Medicaid or underinsured, that's their health care.
It
Um,
also runs um oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot the word. The adoption center and um the animal
Hmm.
shelter that has to take everything that the other shelters say no
Oh,
to.
wow.
So a lot of our animals are harder to adopt out because they're the least wanted
Hmm.
or the most troublesome.
Hmm.
I think a lot of those issues, if you just look at our agenda, seem really boring, but baked into those issues and decisions related to public health, for example, and contracts are about the dispersal of resources. So, are we dispersing resources in a way that is meeting real needs in our community?
Yeah.
And baked into that are questions about equity and perspectives. I'm a proud Democrat, so I see things about being for the people, and I want to make sure that things are equitable in terms of the decisions we're making. I mean, contracts, yeah, we're talking about asphalt on a street, but also that's hundreds of thousands of dollars going to a contractor that we hope is treating its workers well.
Hmm.
So there's lots of implications for the work that we do. And I don't expect everyone to be county government nerds, but I would like to see a community that understands our work a little bit better and, knows when to come to us to tell us what they need to advocate for things.
Yeah, it seems like the work and the leadership of the county council definitely came into focus or had a spotlight shined on it during the pandemic, right? And that
Yeah.
was a fairly contentious thing in these parts. And St. Louis County is the largest, at least by population, county in the state, and a very diverse one. And so, what was that like being in the middle of that? Let's say, can we say shitstorm? I'm guessing it was sort of a shitstorm.
Yes. I mean, so I was the chair of the council at the time. I was in my third month as chair of the council. And it's kind of cute to think about like, early March, late February of 2020, like, oh, we're hearing about this virus. Let's have a hearing and have our public health director come and just tell us what COVID is. I mean, little did we know.
Yeah.
Um, I think at that hearing that I'm thinking of, we had someone storm into the chambers claiming he had just gotten off a cruise ship and was probably exposed. And it was, I thought that was crazy. It
Yeah.
was, again, a clue of what was to come. And then I remember getting a phone call from the county executive that we had our first case and it was in St. Louis County and we needed to, it was in Ladue. And Lisa, that's in your district. Would you like to call the Ladue mayor to tell her? Okay, yes, Dr. Page. So I get on the phone with Mayor Spiewak and said the first case is in Ladue. And, that whole situation kind of went down in infamy too. And
Hmm.
the governor came in. I remember it was a Saturday night. I went into the county building to meet with the governor, Governor Parson at the time, and Dr. Page and his staff, and start to try to make sense of the situation and try to get our ducks in a row. And it was a lot of chaos. This is not unique about St. Louis County, but we were very ill prepared. Um, and, I think that's when we saw a lot of things starting to rip apart
Mhm.
in terms of county government and the dynamics on the council, the dynamics between the executive and the council. And I think that's a microcosm of what we've seen in our country, honestly, since.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It was pretty terrible.
Yeah. Sort of the long story behind this podcast is my experience running for state rep in my pretty red district was I ended up really enjoying knocking on doors, getting out, meeting people, meeting neighbors, and having conversations that obviously I wouldn't have otherwise had. And I'll be honest and say that I expected my district, which is pretty homogenous, to be a little bland, but then I met these really interesting people and everybody had an interesting story. But the thing that I would find out was that having a face to face conversation, we would have a great conversation. We would talk about things that we agreed on or had in common. But then at some point, a lot of people would just make a shift and start kind of dropping Fox News talking points into the conversation. And I realized that I could get them to admit that we agreed on something, but they were still identifying with the people they saw on TV more than they were identifying with their neighbors. And I sort of expanded that out a little bit just to all of St. Louis County. And I started thinking about, 88 municipalities in St. Louis County, and 2/3, I think, of the St. Louis metropolitan area actually lives in the county. And what a sort of driver St. Louis County is, and yet I feel like it's pretty nondescript in terms of having an identity or people, there are communities where people are, a little more kind of cohesive, but I think by and large, for better or for worse, people identify with St. Louis City, and it makes sense why they would, but I sort of felt like somebody's got to be kind of raising a flag for the county. And there's a lot of cool shit happening in the county, and a lot of the very cool people who maybe drive things in the city actually live in the county. And the county is much more of a kind of locus of influence than it gets credit for. And it's also super diverse. So you each have pretty diverse areas that you represent, and the county itself does more broadly. What kind of challenge has that been for you? And what's been, people who are interested in local St. Louis politics are sick of hearing about this, and we talk about it all the time, but like your relationship with the city, how's that been?
In the 5 years I was on the council, I feel like I had a good relationship with the city. In fact, I had better relationships with members of the Board of Aldermen than I did with council members for a long stretch of that time. And so I would like to see more collaboration between the city and the county officially on some kind of project. And I'm just going to throw this out there as my opening project because I think it's a great opportunities. There are already things happening that cross jurisdictional lines. I think we should have one regional centralized emergency 911 emergency response center for the whole of St. Louis and St. Louis County, and maybe even other counties where we share resources, have the same 911 center instead of like pings that go across borders and cause backups in the lines or
Hmm.
and I think it'd be a great place to build success and then see the success grow until the city and the county can find other ways to maybe collaborate more efficiently. I don't think anybody's going to be able to take it to the voters and bring us all together. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think, speaking of ill-fated campaigns, we would be better together.
Mhm.
And there was an article I saw or some study that came out recently that said that our perceptions of our region are actually more negative than the reality that
Mhm.
is happening in our region and the possibility that exists here. And so I'd like to see some more like region pride type of things, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been funny to talk to people who complain about St. Louis broadly, and then to look at my phone or open up the newspaper and see something like, what was it? Baldwin, best place for new homeowners, and like St. Louis, best place for singles, and like there's all these.
Oh God, that got trashed on so many
I
things I
mean,
read.
that was a shock to me, that's for sure. But yeah, it is interesting to see the disparity between those two.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think in terms of like the how, yes, to regional collaboration, I want to see more of it. And I think you raise a good point, Eric, about we are by population the largest region, the largest county in the state. I think we have so much opportunity to set an agenda as St. Louis County for our region and then have things that other folks in the state can learn from. Um, I I know, right? It's like, why do we do this to ourselves? We get in our own way all the time.
I mean, if only we had serious people that were serious about solving serious problems.
Data driven, maybe instead of fear and feeling driven. What a novel idea! But I will say, my district, I think it's different than yours and Kelly's because my district, I've had the luxury of being a blue Democrat in a very blue district. So
Me too.
between
Me
the
too.
nuances and differences in opinions, but I have I think I tend to represent my district pretty well in terms of representing people who already agree with me on a lot of things. And I know that's different. I know your work looked different, and I'm glad there's people like you, Eric, that have gone out there and try to change some hearts and minds and make sure that their actions align more with what you're hearing from them at the doors, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my LGBTQ flag outside my house, that's all I need to do in my district, right?
The bottom line is I keep doing this because I really do love this job, despite the politics and how things get nasty sometimes. I like the policy aspect, and it's a way for me to serve the community that is my home and that has been my family's home for so long. And it's something I still take a lot of meaning from and pride in. And I've been asked to keep doing this too. So I'm not going to do this forever, but I've got another 4 years in me.
After day one, I was like, whoa, this place is wild. And it was never a good fit for me and my skill set. And yeah, I'm glad to be out of that and into where I can feel more joy. I feel like the part that really drove me out was, it happens over time, but it's just the stress that never goes away.
Hmm.
This this idea that if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or am the wrong thing, that I just don't even want to deal with where that could go. It was just very stressful for me during COVID, especially. And it took me long. I'm still recovering from like that shock to my system, I guess is what it was. But being out of politics is making the recovery process much more smooth and fast.
Was it the stress of being a public figure and knowing that your words could show up, in the press or in a social media post or whatever? Or was it the stress of trying to fight these battles against people who were fighting against you day in and day out?
I say both and.
Uh-huh.
And Lisa can tell you this too. There were periods of time where the police were having to like hang out in the neighborhood. Those were not super fun. And we'd get, we couple of times. I shouldn't even be smiling. This is terrible, but we get hate mail,
Hmm.
and you get hate emails, and you get haters that show up and hate on you in public. It was too much.
I've definitely learned how to adapt some things, and keep doing this and pick my battles and compartmentalize. And it's a skill to be learned.
Yeah, I'm sure it is a skill to be learned. I also think that some people are just better suited. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Angela might disagree. I think I'm more Kelly than Lisa in this case. Because, yeah, I mean, one reason why I describe my foray into politics as short-lived is I just, after the last election and with everything that's been happening in this Trump term, I can't, like, my mental state can't endure staying that engaged. And I'm really torn because I want to be part of a solution. I don't want to be someone who just puts their head in the sand. But at the same time, like, it's not good for me to be outraged all day, every day. And I've
Yeah.
got kids who, like, we all have kids, but I have kids who depend on me and I'm their only parent. And I will spiral into a social media rabbit hole and it's bad. And so,
So here's what I
mhm.
think. Like really, I think be a part of a new kind of solution, because I don't think the solution is Republicans or Democrats. I think it's time for all these outdated systems that support the patriarchy to finally burn the fuck down. And like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what is to rise out of those ashes, but it needs to happen, because whatever got us here is not a system we want to rely on anymore. And I just think for anybody that can thank God for you, Lisa, there's a sane voice representing me. But I also think while that's still going on, those of us who are out, who think differently, who can see, not that you can't, Lisa, but who see what could be, I feel like we're the ones that need to be working on building something new.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
maybe that's your place too.
And here's the thing, too, another lesson learned. This is more about holding a line right now than it is about transforming anything, unfortunately.
Totally.
And like, there's a role for everybody. Eric, Kelly, you guys are finding your voice and your pathways through different avenues. We need that too. But yeah, I struggle sometimes with like, am I propping up a system that just doesn't work anymore versus how much can I transform the system? And I've been someone coming in from the outside and now I'm on the inside and there's just a lot to sift through with all of that.
Yeah.
Holding the line is so important,
Well, and that's
because
yeah, totally. And right now in like our very dark place that we're in here in Missouri and federally, where democracy is like literally being dismantled. And I mean, we've always had major flaws in our country, but this is a different type of offense I think that we've seen. Yeah, I mean, sort of my vision for the next few years is just it being a place where people's voice matters and they can see a
Hmm.
functioning government. Begin to think about what that could look more like at the state and federal levels. We've got our work to do in the county to that end for sure, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, it's so cliche to say, but it's a crazy time. And then, well, maybe the two of you sort of represent two sides of this. One is like, can we get back to some norms and can we get back to everyone agreeing on things like people voting and, the Voting Rights Act and keeping the government open, et cetera?
Getting money out of politics, for crying out
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but then on the other side, I think there's people. I think I'm beginning to lean more on the side of you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like
Yeah.
it's on fire, and we just have to talk about what we build next. I don't know. Yeah.
That's what I think. And like I say, what's it's not worth saving. I
Hmm.
mean, I feel really bad. I genuinely feel really bad for the people that are going to get hurt for this. I don't care who you voted for. If you're getting hurt by what is happening or what's still to come, like, I feel terrible for you. But
So I'll make the argument on the other side, which is you are there enough people for that to build that, to build the next thing, to build a post patriarchal society, or do we need to sort of engage those like middle of the road, scared of the future but pissed off at Trump people to kind of say, okay, we can claw a little bit back. I think that there's a general feeling, certainly among mainstream Democrats, or at least old school Democrats, who think, oh, if we can just get that white male vote, get 10% more of the white male vote, then we'll be in power. But Kelly, you're saying it's too late for that.
well, I mean, I'm not saying, listen, I think the I think change is a one step forward, two steps back process. Whether it's you're making a change in your personal life, or we're trying to change our business, or we're trying to change our country. I think both it's a yes and situation where the system that's there, as shitty as it is, while it's burning, we still have to use the resources that are available and reach the people that need the help, but we just can't keep propping it up anymore. That energy has to go to building, imagining, and building what's new. Whether I think there are enough of us, the question in every election is, are there enough of us who can be bothered to vote? I think right now the chances are high that people are going to be bothered to vote.
Hmm.
Who that looks like or who the candidates are, I can't, won't, don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Kelly, I'm struck by what you said about about it not being worth saving. I don't know exactly what the it is that you're talking about, but also I'm like, I don't know that I would go that far because I feel like our democracy is a container for a lot of things that we
It's
want
worth
to be
saving.
possible. We've had
Yeah.
people that have been part of it and have used that to their own benefit and rigged the rules for so long, and that's been cut across lines of race, class, gender, all of those things. Um, and now we just see all of our public institutions just being totally dismantled. I don't, I think I still, and this isn't what you were saying, I don't think either now, but like, I really do still believe in the promise of what this country was founded on.
Too, 100%. Me too. It's the systems that
Yeah,
hold it
right,
up, right? That
right.
were
Well,
reinforced white wealthy men.
and I think the biggest threat right now, yeah, we can talk about current voters, but we need to figure out how to intervene on people who aren't voting yet, but are starting to get sort of recruited and radicalized by these very extreme white right wing machines.
Yeah.
I think that's one of our greatest threats to our democracy right now. And it's,
Well, I mean, if you want to understand voters, this Beyond the Ballot quiz, this
oh, I
AmericanSurveyCenter.org that
saw
got
that in a
started
text, but I
earlier.
haven't said it yet. Yeah.
OMG. It tells you this person believes this, this, and this. Who did they vote for?
Hmm.
And I was wrong every single time. I think I got one right way down there, and it was cute for a minute or two, and then it got really scary and sad.
Wow.
Well, how do we, and it's like we need everything is so driven by relationships. How do we have these candid, meaningful conversations with people at scale? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can go to some doors, but like, how do we scale that? There's organizations that I support that I'm a part of that do this deep canvassing. That is so important, but it's time consuming, it's laborious, it's how do we scale that kind of work though to actually reach people in more meaningful ways and connect with them?
Yeah. I do want to ask, I have to ask, this is going to come out on Halloween. And Kelly, you talked about the county council not being a good fit for your skill set. And I would love to talk more about your skill set,
My witchcraft skill
your
set.
witchcraft skill set. Yeah.
Well, with Lisa here as a witness, I actually think it all comes down and back to like I'm a skilled community organizer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that I bring magic into community and it works for some people. I love doing tarot readings, and I also I lead a lot of moon rituals. So like tap into the moon and have a vulnerable night in with your girlfriends, usually is how it works out. But it, I hope, Lisa, you tell me that my work is helping people believe in their dreams and like get to go after them.
No, I think you're right, Kelly. Like I find what you have to offer to be, people think witchcraft and stuff is very like woo woo and weird and like no, I mean what you're offering is an experience to really meditate and reflect and sort of be quiet in your body, and sometimes that's a solo thing that you guide people through at home, or it's a meaningful way to connect with your friends. And you know how I have had some really tough times in the past couple of years. I got divorced. That was a huge life change for myself and my children. And like being able to get together with you and some of our other friends and have you guide us through setting intentions and manifesting things,
Hmm.
like I truly believe that's been something that has really helped me in my healing journey. And I mean, I truly mean that. And I wear crystals now. I put crystals in my pocket. I got a past life reading, not from Kelly, but it's amazing how much my past life reading actually gave me some insight into where I am now, including on the county council. Um, so I think, take what's useful, leave what's not. I found a lot of useful stuff in all of this.
There you have it. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Lisa. I'll slip you your Benjamin later.
No, I'm gonna sending people your way.
Okay, speaking of past lives, can you tell me the story of how we were connected, Kelly, in a past life?
Yeah, I was looking for an opportunity to say like Eric or is it Mark? And I have known each other for 500 years.
Yeah. Oh, I
So
was definitely going to bring it up.
oh yeah, okay. So, I had this experience. It was having my Akashic records read, and in the middle of it, I was taken back to another time where Eric and I were friends. Like I was some lady that lived out in the woods by herself with herbs and stuff. I mean, it kind of sounds like me today too. And we had somehow met and we were friends, and he was coming over for tea, and I was all excited to like hang out with my friend. But instead, what showed up at my door was this like all the townspeople with their spears of fire, and they dragged me out and like set me on fire. And Mark was his name in that lifetime. Mark. We still call you Mark. Did you know that?
I did not know
We call you Mark behind your back.
that.
Yeah, had set that into motion because he was made to believe that I was bad and that I was a witch and that I was bringing bad things to the community. And so, yeah, turned me in, set me up.
So Eric, when someone tells you that, like what do you do with that? What has your reaction been?
It was interesting because I was like, obviously, I'd do it again. No. I so I think you guys know this. I'm a Christian Scientist. I have a fairly unique and marginalized religion and view on the world, and particularly like metaphysically focused, let's say. Um, and also, it's also a religion that is pretty easy to characterize as crazy or cult-like or that kind of thing. And as a result, I sort of have this approach to hearing lots of things, of just being really kind of open to it. Um, one of the most basic parts of Christian Science is that uh, we are not confined to a material body or a material lifetime. And so, who am I to say what has or will or does go on beyond, what I can see materially? And so I felt like I had to just be like, I had to just silence the like logical part of myself that was like, this is obviously crazy, and be like, what do I know? Maybe. Um, I didn't really know what to do with it in terms of like, okay, what do I do now? Do I make amends? Do I, um,
Promise
but
not to set me on fire again.
yeah, and I also am pretty self-conscious in a probably negative way of just being a straight white middle-aged man who, what am I going to do? Go around telling people no, they're wrong. I know what happened and what will happen and that kind of thing. Speaking of the patriarchy, I feel like it's important to sort of listen more than I talk. So I was just like, I was blown away. I didn't know what to do with it. And I think Kelly very generously sort of like let me change the subject.
Well, that's where we were leaving to. And I also like I did say I just want to stick up for myself. I know this sounds crazy. I would probably think I'm crazy if I were you, and if you never want to speak to me again, okay.
And I was like, how about if I just interview you on a podcast?
Here we are,
Here
a
we
few
are.
years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about your witchcraft, is that the same as Wiccan?
Well, no,
Okay.
Wiccan is like so Wiccan pulls a lot of pieces of witchcraft, but like I'm an eclectic witch, I like to think of because I'm really into nature and my native plants. It's out of control over here. I spent like 3 hours planting yesterday, and it's part of my empowering other people with ritual practice. It's partially being more conscientious about the energy around me and my space and my body, and just, opening doors. Like right now, the veil between our consciousness and whatever exists beyond us is thinning, and it gets every thinner and thinner until about the Day of the Dead, and then so it's thin right now, and just being open to messages from my ancestors or feelings from ancestors, and just paying attention to my and trusting my intuition. I feel like these are all parts of my witchcraft practice, and frankly, should, if I'm being honest, be practices we all have every day anyway.
So the Day of the Dead is the day after Halloween. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's might be the second this year, but it's usually around the first, second. Yeah. Carl Jung was a, 20th century psychologist who wrote about archetypes and consciousness. And I think we're all part of the same collective consciousness, as stardust flying through the universe, if you will. And that the elements behind Day of the Dead and other similar religions or rituals or practices from different areas around the world all come from that same knowledge that there is something in the seasonal change right now that thins the veil and allows more us here little earthlings to have more access to what's beyond. So I use this to tap into that with intentionality.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Okay, so if my 11-year-old twin daughters wanted to be witches for Halloween, what would they wear?
I mean, I would say they wear whatever they want.
Does witchcraft enter into your parenting? Do you have to say, "Oh, these creepy things that you see on TV or in, you know, pop culture are
No,
not what I do"?
no, I mean they're just part of, they when all the zesty besties come over, and, we're standing around the kitchen making magic while they're running around on or playing dance, whatever, Party USA, or whatever they're doing. I think, and also I feel like parenting for me is so different than it was being parented.
Hmm.
Like my kids are constantly collaborating and negotiating and having conversations about everything. And so it's just one of the many things we talk about and explore. They would not consider themselves witches.
Thanks so much. This was super fun. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. You too. Bye, guys.
Game over.